Hi there, and in today's video we're going to explore the answer to the question, how many hours of homeschooling a day? When you begin to look at how many hours a day a child is in public school, that's a starting point, right? So elementary school, middle school, high school, they're all in school for different lengths of time. But then you want to begin to factor in extracurricular type of activities and homework. And you begin to get an idea of time frame that if your child was going to be in a public school, how much time they'd be spending there. So we're going to factor that in, and we'll take a look at a few other factors in answering that question. There are really four major sections we're going to do in this particular video, where we're going to talk again, as I always do, about mindset and the importance of mindset and how that's going to factor in. And we're going to talk about recommended hours, because that changes from age groups. We're going to look at what they would be spending if they weren't being homeschooled in either a public or private school. We'll kind of look at those hours and what they look like. And then we're going to talk about the playtime, the free time, the extra time. What should that look like? How many hours should that look like? And what's important about that time? So that's our four sections for this video. So your mindset around what's important about education and what your objectives are going to help to shape this answer to how many hours, right? So if you really believe it's important for your child to develop a good, solid work ethic, and that through hard work they're going to achieve great things, and you want them to develop self-discipline about being able to work at home and in any environment, the number of hours that you are working on some of those skill sets are going to shape what your day will look like. So your mindset around your goals and the objectives that you believe are important to teach and train are going to help you decide how many hours are going to be connected. And what I include in this too is not just about academics, right? It's about, we're also going to be working on training their ability to do music or perform athletically, or all those, or stage and theater, poetry, dance, all these kind of arts type things. Training that all-important mindset, the idea of public service and giving back. There are so many different elements to what an education could look like, and your mindset around the value of all those different areas is going to shape how you structure the day that they have. Because ultimately, we all have the same amount of time, 1,414 minutes a day. You need to have a certain number of hours of sleep. And beyond that, there are other necessities too, eating and hygiene and all that kind of stuff, right? But you want to begin to figure out how you're going to structure that educational component and what's included in it. That begins with your mindset. So when we look at what's kind of recommended, we're going to be talking about actual academic skill development. All right, so we're talking about the reading, the writing, the arithmetic. If we want to talk about the triumvirate, grammar, logic, rhetoric, the elementary school level, grammar, that's the fundamentals, right? It's understanding language, including the language of math. So that skill development, 1 to 3 hours a day, probably closer to 3 hours, in my professional opinion, is what you'd be looking at for that skill development. So you get them through elementary school, and the skills, now you're beginning to look more at some of that logic development, as well as continuing the development of that, the grammar base. But now you're adding some other skills on. So you're looking at 3 to 4 hours per day on that skill development, just that academic component. Then you get to high school, and there's a little more added on, right? So you're looking at like 4 to 6 hours per day, again, just on the academic skill set. There's a lot more to education as we well know, than there is just that academic skill set, but that's a general guideline on the different age groups. So if you look at what public school and private schools are doing for elementary schools, right, you get an idea of when they start. And it varies from district to district. Some will have their elementary school kids start later, some earlier, right, and they get out middle of the afternoon. But within that day, there's a whole lot of different things going on, right? So that entire day, they aren't focused purely on the academic component. So when you think about those hours that a child would be in public school, if they weren't at home, those hours you need to fill, right? Because they're home, not there. Filling those hours, elementary school would look a little bit different than what middle school and the number of hours a middle school child's going to. And the same with high school, the number of hours a high school will go to. And as they get older, sports will look a little bit different, right? So there's more school-based sports. So if you want your homeschool child to be involved in school-oriented sports or the school play or the school band or any of those extracurricular, you do need to, of course, check out what the regulations are and the laws and how that all handled in your district and your state. But you also need to figure in how that works into your school schedule. So playtime, right? That learning, well, in elementary school, a lot of that is play-oriented learning as well. So that needs to get kind of factored in. All those different components about how you're going to be training their mindset, all these extracurricular type learning opportunities, all these specials, and they call them some schools, whatever they're going to be called, things like learning a musical instrument, which often is given in elementary school. All these kind of opportunities are going to be up to you, the parents, to add and create. And again, this goes back to your mindset, right? What you believe is valuable for the education, what it should look like, and then that's going to kind of dictate time. But what's being done in public schools kind of gives you a roadmap, because if they were in that public school or that private school, this would be the hours that they would be in that school setting doing their school day. So you can be looking at that. So I have to spend a little bit of time here talking about the role of play, especially in elementary school. And there's two aspects to this I want to briefly touch upon, and that is play as part of the actual academic skill development, which can be very powerful. Old-fashioned kind of parlor games can be very beneficial in developing some academic skills, communication skills, doing things like charades or 20 questions or games such as that have some real academic skill development value to them, right? Storytelling time and making up stories and oral telling, where ways that you can create that into games. And there's lots of books out there on ways to teach some of those academic oriented stuff in game environment. So you make that fun. But then there is free play. And free play, sadly, is a lost part of childhood, quite frankly. Jonathan Haidt is a professor who's written a couple books, several books actually, but one of his more recent ones is The Anxiety Generation. And he talks a little bit in that book about the loss of unorganized free play and all the detrimental aspects that's had on kids' development and its connection to inability to solve problems, increased levels of stress, and there's a whole lot of research and data on that. And parents, schools, homeschooling, when you try to have groups of kids, letting them play and taking risks that happen with play. And yes, they might get hurt. They might sprain an ankle, sprain a wrist, scrape their knee, Worse, they might actually even break a bone. It's possible through the play. My son, at a public school, out at recess time, playing on a snowbanking, broke his leg. All right? It happens, but you've got to let kids play like that. It is incredibly important and beneficial for their social and psychological development. So in your homeschool setup, recognize that. Again, especially elementary school, but even middle school. Too many middle schools have been so obsessed with class hours and academics and pushing that they haven't even let those kids play. And middle school kids still need to play. High schoolers, yeah, they do too, but it's different for high schoolers. But they need to have some of that recreation time where they're kind of in control of that time on their own. High school kids still like that playtime, though it looks a little bit different. And for males in particular, high school males, yes, there needs to be some guidelines, but you still got to allow for some of that free play, because high school males can, their risky behavior and things are something that you do need to kind of watch, or set some parameters too. But that doesn't mean you have over stringent rules where they don't get that chance to really kind of have some pickup basketball games, right? Or football games, or whatever else they might be doing out in the schoolyard. It's so vitally important. I would invite you to subscribe to our channel, like this video if you found it of any value at all. And I would also encourage you to register for our free webinar, Empower and Excel. And you can find that, the link to that will be in the description of this video. You can go there, just look for the Empower Excel icon and click that, get yourself registered, and check that webinar out today.